Hey, last class of Unit 1. We're going to go over just a basic overview of the third part of React, and then I'm going to show you some examples, some live coding. I think this is my only slide. I don't think they really talked about too many new topics. The main thing that they tried to talk about is this thing they call state. So whenever you're dealing with state, you have a state variable, such as I think one of the things was like notes. And then you have a state setter function, which is usually set whatever your variable is, so like set notes. And then you have an equals, and then you do the use state with parentheses, and then whatever your default, whatever your initial value of that is, that's what you put inside the parentheses there. I'll show example of that here in a little bit. They do talk about the whole reason React and or other frameworks came about. If you wanted to change something, meaning whenever I click a button, a number goes up by 1. I mean, that's a simple thing. The problem is in the computer, your browser, one thing, when you click a button, you had to tell it in its function to do something. So you'd say, hey, set this variable up by 1. But then you'd look at your page and it would not set it up by 1. Like you click, 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 and it never changed. So then they were like, okay, well, now I can click the button, it'll add 1 to the variable, but then it would reload the page. And it's like, oh, okay, it can do that. And so that's how they started doing that, is you'd have to like manually reload the page to then it to show the new information. Well, then when you're talking about big websites, then you're loading a lot of information every single time. Every time you reload, you're having to reload all of this information. So then they started trying to compartmentalize. Well, if I'm changing just this one section, that's the only part that I want to reload. I don't want to have to reload all of it. And that's where this virtual DOM started to grow out of that, is now using reconciliation, they can just change that one component. So just the component that they care about that's dealing with the button and the number, that's the only one that re-renders. Everything else just stays the same. So it's making it more interactive and faster so that you don't have to reload the page every single time. Just like before, there are ways that we do event handlers, like when you click. Like what you do is, in React and in other languages, to be honest, if you're handling an event, you usually have the word handle in front of it, and then the event name. So the example is handle click. So handle click is handling the click, usually on a button. Forms, we've done forms before. We have not talked about forms in a better sense. I'm going to try to do this without any pictures, which might be a little hard. But whenever you fill out a form and you hit save or submit, that is when you click the button, you can do an on click for the button. I think some of you learned this in the graded assignment 5. When you click that button, you could add an event listener for on click. But with forms, that's not the norm. With forms, it's an on submit. So you're submitting all of that information in with a form, and they're all grouped together because you have to wrap your form with a form tag. So it knows that all of that information is together, which then means whenever you gather that information and actually validate it or send it off, it can do that better. So you don't do an on click, you would do an on submit. But the problem with, one of the things to think about with those is usually on the on submit, you send it to a URL. You send it to another endpoint and you send that information as a form. We have not been doing that. So that is why this event.prevent default needs to happen, is because it, by default, when you submit a form, it has an action behind the scene where it's trying to send that information somewhere. And on all the stuff that we've been doing, we want to handle that information internally. We're not sending it out. So that's why that event.prevent default happens, is because submit has a default action to it, and we want to prevent that default action of sending it somewhere. We just want to do all the stuff that we code to it, not the default stuff. So hopefully that was a better explanation. It's been a while since we've actually been in lecture. Other than that, I think that's the only thing new, was that mainly the state and understanding that a virtual DOM is there. Again, some of these concepts, when you're coding day to day, if you're a React developer, you know about virtual DOM, you know that it's doing this kind of stuff, but it's not one of those things like you have to memorize and understand exactly how, as much as that it's actually doing it. So keep some of those things at a high level, but state is something that you would have to code. Okay. Tenants code, studio, all this kind of stuff, everything's due today. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Lot of stuff that I want to show you, and some other things I want to talk about. Let's do it in order. So let's do exercise, and then I'll talk about the studio, or the forms. Okay, let's get an IntelliJ. I already have this kind of pulled up, or at least some of these pulled up. I don't know what I have pulled up yet, so I'm going to start clearing. I was messing with this right before. Some of you that got on here early started seeing me play with this. Let's go less interesting to more interesting. So I'm going to start off with the studio. The studio is like every other studio that you guys have been doing. It tells you to do some things. Some of it is worded really good, and some of it not. I just want on the studio, because I have not been, I didn't do this myself, meaning I usually give myself time to do this, but I actually started looking at the Java stuff ahead of time. I'm just going to show you the finished product. So the finished product, I hope this is the finished product. Yeah, I think this is right. All right. This is an example. Remember with Studio, you can type in your own stuff. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. But in this Studio, and I know some of this is a little small, but unfortunately I do need to, I don't know if you remember, but I said that it would be a good idea to get some React developer tools inside here. So this components does help you sometimes. It helps me whenever I'm looking at something that's already been made on where these things live at. So whenever I type on recipe display, the recipe display application or component part of this is that whole entire thing. The recipe photo is just this. The recipe description actually has other things that are built inside of it, meaning the recipe ingredients and recipe author. So hopefully this structure, I do think the structure is laid out for you okay in the studio, but what it actually goes in it, it's very vague. So you gotta work out through that. Again, this was given to me, so like this photo, I don't even know where it came from. But I did want to show you the recipe display, and everything that's in the recipe display is 100% separate than the board assignment and the status change. So when you are working on Studio tonight, just know that your recipe is the biggest one. Your board assignment and your status change, both of those are about the same size, but they're totally different, independent of each other. So you don't have to work on, you can work on one and maybe skip another and then work on another one. So what do they do? Well, the recipe display just displays a bunch of stuff. So there's no interactive stuff there. There's no like states that you have to mess with to changing. It's just displaying things. The whole part that they want you to learn on this one is knowing that you can have components inside of components. So they tell you to make a recipe ingredients component, which remember a component in React is just a function. So you have a React function and then you tie it inside other functions. So as long as you know that they're going to be inside of each other, then you'll be fine on that part. The board assignment, you're going to have a drop down. I'll zoom in a little bit. The board assignment, you get to kind of pick what these are, but you can pick these. What happens is if you don't have anything, so what's cool about this, the props, the hooks, here's the go. My state says no boards yet, and it does tell you to put no boards yet. But as soon as I actually select one, it takes this information and puts it right there. So as I change this, it changes the state. This, if you're going to attack any of these tonight, this would probably be the first one that I would, because I think you'd get the most information with the shortest amount of time. So I would go after the board assignment first. Secondly, I'd go over this one. So this one is the status change. I will be going over something almost identical to this in the forms, because this looks just like the forms. That's why I would hit it second, just to remind yourself about the forms. But whenever I type here, it types it here, and then when I hit submit, it just changes this verification, but it doesn't actually put that information down there. So that's just like your form. Hopefully that at least clears up what the studio is tonight. Again, I didn't do it right before studio because I don't think it's super important. The highlights are, these are components inside of a component. I would do the board one first, and then this one's your form. Okay. Next thing, VS Code. Okay, so I went over studio. Let's go over exercises. On the exercises, again, this one was done for you, but I wanted to just go over the components so that you understood what they were doing. Okay, so I'm going to do my big overview of what is React even doing. So remember, this might be because I'm going to try to make this so you can only see. Yeah. So remember, this is my highest one is exercises. So inside exercises, remember, it's going to look at the index HTML. This is the first thing it's going to look at. That's why the title across the top when I'm running this, when I run this, it says Vite plus React at the top. That's because I can change the title here. And now it says LaunchCode example at the top. It goes and it says, hey, there's some kind of module that is at this main.jsx. And remember, this main.jsx is going to look for this div with ID root. So these are like a paired combo here, where your code actually goes here, which is this main.jsx, which is this, and it says, create my root React app in this element called root. And well, what do you want me to create? I want you to create an app. And so technically you can change the name of this, but don't. But this name is pointing to app.jsx. So then I can go to my app.jsx. Inside my app.jsx, it says my hobbies, needlepoint. I think this is what they gave us. So needlepoint, that's an H1 tag. And then it does this component of hobby introduction, and then also the component of my projects. So if I go into hobby introduction, all it has here is it returns a bunch of HTML. It doesn't really do anything fancy there, which are these things right here. And then this one's the kind of more interactive part. So you have a project that does use state, and the state is going to be an index of 0. Index is the variable name. Set index is how I'm going to set it somewhere else in my function. And then I'm going to default to 0. So my index is going to be 0. It says here, when I handle click, remember how we use the keyword handle? and then the action or event that I'm taking, which is clicking. It says here, if my index is still underneath my length, then just keep adding 1. And if it gets to my length, reset it back to 0. So this is a common pattern here of index keeps going. To be honest, I use the mod, but I use the mod when I do it. It's just a one-liner. I would do index, set index to +1, but then I would set this to be, anyway. This does the same thing, resets it. Once it gets to the length, it resets it back to 0. My projects is my data projects, which my data is my data.json. My projects, my one project is my projects, all of my projects at that index. And then this is actually what it's returning. So this is all the functional stuff. And then this is the kind of HTML part. I'm going to make a button that says next. When I click it, I'm going to do the handle click thing that I said above. My H2 is going to be my project.canvas. Remember, the project is my one indexed value inside my projects. And it also has a photo URL, and that's what returns there. So again, when I click next, it goes up. Now, the one thing I did want to show, if I go to inspect and I go over to my components, like I said before, and I go to my projects, it tells me what my state value is right here. So it says that my state is 1. When I click it, it goes to 2. When I click it, it goes to 3, 4, 5, or I guess I don't have 5 things, so it goes back down to 0. Well, I have 5 things. The largest index is 4. So it goes back to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when I click it again, it go back down to 0. So this little dev tool thing helps you see your state variables rather than doing console log, which you can also do. And then if you do this magic button, it'll actually tell you what your variable is. So that's my index variable. Just showing you some dev tools things. But again, this was all done for you. So if I was in your shoes, it being the last example, I probably would have just looked at it, played with it, and then been done with it. I probably wouldn't have done much else. And then the forms. So this is where I'll show you a couple other things. Not that you have to do the things that I do, but just want to show you different. I can do it through here. So this is the form. I think this is what they gave you originally. I think that I put it back because I was playing with it, and I think I put it back. So the shoe button actually isn't a part of the form. The shoe button was just something they were showing in code. So that's this one where if I add a shoe, it just goes up by 1 each time. They gave you that code. They also gave you this form code, like through the form example, it would show you all these individually, but then you can just copy and paste that code right into here, and that's what I did. So I did not, I didn't change anything, I think, from what I just copied and pasted from the book. So to go through this again, notes is what they're calling their variable, and whatever this is, you do set, whatever that variable is, use state, and then this is the initialized to, and this is just going to be a blank string, handle change and handle submit. So we've done handle click, handle submit should make sense when you hit submit on a form, that's going to handle that one. We haven't done on change or handle change, but that'll make sense here in a second. So we do have a form. This is what I was talking about. If you have a form with inputs, and this form is going to categorize all of this together, and then this input type is a button. So even though it doesn't say button, that right there is this thing right here. This is input of type text area. That's what this is. It's a text area. Now, this is where it gets really weird, and I don't know why they do this, but they say that the value equals notes. The value is what actually is the value inside of it. And this is setting the value of my input box to be whatever my notes are. Meaning, if I go up here and let's say that just my default notes is launch code, it's going to put launch code in my text value, which I think is super weird. I don't know why the value would be preset for me, even though once I change it, it'll change. But if I refresh the page, it'll default back to whatever I put right here as my default, which I think is kind of weird, but let's keep going with it. So it says on change. Did you see whenever I typed anything in here, it changes it? That's because anytime you change the input, it runs this command, which this command grabs the event target value and sets the notes variable to be whatever that is. And it just so happens that it's also resetting our input box right here. It's also re-putting the notes after the preview. So every time it sets the notes, it reactively updates notes on this page. So every change, it's changing those. The other thing was the on submit. How do I handle on submit? Well, when I hit submit, it's going to have an alert that says form submitted. I know that's kind of small for some of you to read, but it says form submitted, which is exactly what it says right here to do. Form submitted. I think that's pretty straightforward. My problem is I don't know why they have a value notes. Like this is actually changing the value each time. If you want to have a default value, I would use a form that has default values. Those are fine. But then I don't know if you also noticed there's actually no name to this input. And remember, in all of our other stuff, we grabbed the value. That the user typed in by calling its name, its input name. So if it was me doing this, I would change this to name. And then I don't care what we call this per se. Name. Add your report here. So I would say like report. My name's going to be report because it says add your report here. That's why I got it. So if I do this, this thing still works because it says on change, still do this thing that's up here. So on change, I'm still setting the notes to be whatever that value is. So that didn't change. But let's right here. Actually grab the report input and submit it back to them. Now this is, I had to look this up. I did not know how to do this natively, but this event has some stuff in it. So I actually do have to grab the event. I have to grab the target. Now this is where it gets a little weird. You can actually tell it what to grab. And because I called it report, I think this should work. Because I named it report. I think this should work. And then I'm going to say form submitted. Yeah, report input. I don't know why I deleted that. Let's see if this actually works. Yeah. So I know it's hard to see the exact letters, but hopefully you can see that it's a lot longer because it says report submitted. and then it actually gives me the report here. So that's kind of how I would do it. If you want to do an on-change event, you can do it here, but the submit will grab the actual report. It's not grabbing the notes anymore. It's grabbing the actual user input, and I'm using this name to grab the input. And we've seen that in graded assignment 5, we had names of inputs. You can even do it. Oh, I didn't know there was a submitted component. Right, it doesn't know what report is, so I'm going to have to put that variable up here. So I'm just going to make another one of these. And I'm going to call this report. And if I call that report, I need to call this set report. And I'm just going to set it to be blank. But that also means that whenever I want to set it, somewhere right here, I need to do the set report with that report value. So this, I'm grabbing the report input from the user form. Here I'm setting the report variable that I just made. Here I'm making an alert that's telling me what my form submitted was. But the whole reason I'm doing this report input is because I added an extra paragraph down here that says that wants to use the report. So let's see if this works. Okay, so report submitted, okay. So this one's still working on change, but this one's not on change. This one waits until I submit. And then once I submit, it puts it down there. So that's how I'm used to reports actually working or forms working, is you don't want to, on the other hand, just to throw something else tidbit, I actually had to do an on change once. I actually had to call a Bing web API, a Bing Maps API. So whenever I was typing out, 100 Main Street or whatever else, on change, it was populating underneath here all the different addresses that could potentially be used. You guys have seen those in other applications, and I've had to do something similar to that, mainly because I was working on electronic visit verification, so it was GPS. I cared more about the GPS, but they would type in the address, and then I cared about the GPS. But anyway, and again, anything I type here is not changing this one because I have to hit the submit button first, and then it submits it. All right. I'm going to look through the questions a little bit because I think I'm done with the React stuff. Yeah, I went over forms. I went over the exercises studio. So I'm going to answer questions. Then I'm going to show you something in IntelliJ to get you jump started for the next time. And then I think we will get done early. All right, I'm going to look at the questions. Oh, and then there are some other, I still have that random question. I'll answer that at the end. I don't know about behind two variables. If you're talking about here, if I did this to be notes, I think I already, hold on, I should be able to pull it back up. It would just do the same thing, even though the on change is on here, because that variable is the same variable, it's going to do the same thing. So if I didn't want to actually keep it until it's submitted, I'd have to make it a different variable because these are reactively getting set on the on change. I don't know if that was that question. Can you initialize the variable to what it was before the page was reloaded? I don't know exactly. It's on load is here. Once we hook up databases and or data, you could do like a data dot whatever, what we've done before, data dot whatever, and have a data form, and you can do that. And so then it is looking somewhere else for the first value. Unfortunately, the dot target, so event dot target, this is, I Google this stuff because I'm not a front-end developer. So I really don't know as much about this, as much as that's the thing you use. It has different, things that you could potentially use. But I have to Google it every time. Some other good questions. We're definitely going into Java and IntelliJ, but are we coming back? For learning purposes, we are not coming back to React or JavaScript. I will reference it a couple of times because whenever you're building on, when you are gaining knowledge, you always should build on something kind of. So anytime I can reference back to what we've done in Unit 1, I will. But we won't be touching, like I won't open up VS Code for another couple months. And then it'll be Unit 3, and at Unit 3, you're going to be building a full stack application. So you will be coming back to React at that time. And or if you want to try something else, you can. That unit's wide open. It's up to the group, and we'll explain a little bit more about the guide rails that we'll put around you. But no, after tonight, if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But no, for the lecture and studio, everything else for the next couple months will not be JavaScript or even VS Code. And then if you really look at the Java stuff, it won't go as long because we don't have to reteach you how to do for loops and while loops and variables and all that kind of stuff because you already know how. So the Java by itself is actually a little shorter, but the unit is the same size, and that's because we're also going to talk about databases. We're going to talk about a couple other things like what an API is. So there's going to be other things besides just Java in the next unit. Yeah, if somebody else posted React projects, do those. I will show the inspect tools again. Okay, so let's say I'm talking about this page right here. I did have to download this, and I Googled it last time. It's like add React developer tools, and I'm using Chrome. So then I would just go here, or even, so that's the one I did, but that's because I have Chrome. If you go to React developer tools, they'll have browser extensions for Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. If you're on a Mac, they do have some Safari commands down here that you could potentially do. I've never done the Safari ones, but that's how you do. I just Google React developer tools, maybe for browser. But then once it's added, you just do the inspect like you have done before. You know how like I've showed you like the network tab where these look really bad with it all small, but so there's different tabs up here like console to show all the horrible things that I've seen right there. That's not good, but oh, that's because I was adding random things like data in there. So the console log, it's the same one. It just adds these two extra ones. And I know it's hard to read what they exactly are, but you can see the purple boxes next to them. And I click on the components one, and it'll show me, oh, I have two components. I have a shoe button, which is the one that does the shoe count. And every time I click the add shoe, it's not super quick. It's a debugging thing, so it's kind of running in the background, but it'll at least show you once you pause. And then the form report, Remember, I added an extra state in there. So there's a state for notes and a state for report now. So whenever I type, my notes will update, but my report won't until I hit submit. And then once I hit submit, that thing will go, and then this one will change. So hopefully that's good. Okay. This is not a double variable. This is, where's my VS Code? This is a very React, what they call a hook. So this is a construct that somebody in, developing React says, we need a variable, but by default, variables, whenever you change them, your browser doesn't know you changed them. So if you do it, however, somebody made this, I have not looked under the covers on this because I don't need to, because it works. This is the variable that you'll use whenever this is like a read-only variable. It just displays. You cannot change this variable because your browser won't comprehend that. So the only way to do that is to also have a function. So technically this set notes is not a variable, it's actually a function. It's a set state action. And so I treat this like a function. I want to set the notes. And then this use state is the actual hook that React is listening to at all times. So hooks are just there, and they just throw out information whenever they need to. And then your browser's listening for that information to know that it needs to change something. But this is your variable when you want to display. This is the function you use. See even how it has parentheses around it? It's like a function. So yeah, definitely that is something that I would warn against. This is your variable. There's only one, but there's a function to set it. All right, I have a couple other, yeah, I think I've answered all but one that I'm going to answer here in a little bit. Questions, so keep them coming through. There are a couple small things that were brought up in the lecture questions that I at least want to address. First of all, I think somebody else already addressed the issue of the const versus let. Remember, const is whenever you don't want it to change. Let is whenever you want it to change. Because React is re-rendering these, I do think that they by default use const. But I don't know enough. I don't have enough professional experience on why I would do one versus the other in React. Generically, const is a constant. You're just going to set it. You're never going to change it. And again, notes, technically you can't change. You have to run a function to change it, which is the set notes. And the set notes function actually never changes either. It changes the variable, but the actual function just sets the notes. So the function doesn't change. By this, I would just use constant whenever I'm dealing with React. If you ever get into a professional, whatever, like if you're working on this, again, most of the time, unless if you're working for a startup, you will not be creating brand new stuff. Which for some people is like, well, we're creating brand new stuff here. That's what I feel comfortable with. But it's the opposite for me. Creating brand new stuff, I'm going to do it wrong. I'm going to do it inefficiently. I'm going to have to rewrite it, 3 months from now because I didn't do it the right way. Where if I get a job and I already have this component that works and they want me to either edit this component or write another component that's almost identical to this, then I just copy and paste. And then it gives me a reference of what my company wants these things to look like. And I'm just going to mirror these things. So again, you can think about what is good common practice. When you actually get a job, whatever common practice is, you're going to throw it out the window and just do it however the company's been doing it. makes everybody happier whenever you just fall in line and do what the company wants you to do. Once you're established, then they'll start asking you, well, how would you want to do it? And they might ask you for change, but that's not an entry level. So it does feel like sometimes when you're entry level, it is copy and paste and you get paid to do it. Luckily, you're learning alongside because you don't want to stay there. But yes, at the beginning, it's not as bad. So constant let. Arrow functions, I hope whatever that question was got resolved. I can look it up if I want to, who asked it, but I don't think that was a problem because I use arrow functions almost everywhere I went. So it might have been a syntax issue somewhere, because if you mess up a syntax, but if you still have that question, I don't want to ignore it. Message me independently, like a direct message, and send me the code, and I'll look into that. The other good thing that was asked that I probably won't give you a clear answer on, that it was job titles. What are certain things that you could right now be looking for? And I think even in the current job market, every single one of you could be looking for internships. I mean, that's what LaunchCode's apprenticeship more or less is an internship. I would look for any internships in software development, software engineering, application development, anything that you would even think considering, even if it's not even front end. If it's an internship, they are expecting you not to know much. They just want you to come with the right skills that you learn fast and that you're willing to contribute to them. So I think right now that'd be the only kind of software engineering type of thing is internships. I think once you build yourself a full stack application, and then you can present that project in an interview, that's when you can start doing entry level. But unless if you have a project that's big enough, I don't think anybody would look at you for entry level, because the first thing they're going to ask for an entry level is, well, what have you been working on? What's your project that you want to show me? And if you show them graded assignment 6, they won't hire you. So on the other hand, internships, they might. Internships are all about how fast can you learn, what kind of communication skills, can you work as a team, those kind of things. So you might have the soft skills, or they don't call them that anymore. Anyway, there's like 5 different names they call them anymore, but those transferable skills, whatever you want to call them, as long as you have enough of those, you can land an internship. Yeah, ChatGPT gives you all those things. To be honest, unless if you're working for a nonprofit, almost all internships anymore are paid. Now they may not pay much, but all the ones I know for development are paid. The only ones I know that are not are usually like a nonprofit wants you to build them a website, and you're like, okay, so that I can gather experience, and they don't have any money, I'll do it for free. But yeah, the experience is making projects, and then making more projects, and then making better projects. Unfortunately, that's pretty much the only way to get more than just an internship, is to show that you have the skills. And the only way you can show it is by having projects that you've built. And to be honest, so then I'll segue into what does today's market look like? Today's market is a hard market to get into right this second. I know several people that I think that 2 years ago could have got hired as an entry-level person, and now I am seeing people with 3 years of coding experience getting hired as entry level. I know a few people, if they got laid off, they're looking for jobs now that pay them 20% less than they were making, just so that they'd have a job. So unfortunately, you guys are competing with people that already have 2 to 3 years of experience on those entry-level jobs right this second. Here's how the only way to get around that is networking. That's the only way. I can tell you on my Saturday group, I haven't done it for software engineering because my company hasn't been hiring a lot of software engineers, but for tech jobs that are adjacent to it, like project managers, I had somebody show up with some basic engineering development experience. But to be honest, he could communicate. Like him and I would have a conversation, and I'm like, do you know how to clearly express your ideas and how to judge things and how to evaluate? And I could just tell that he would be a great project manager. And so he was easy to shoe in and say, hey, you need to talk to this guy for a project manager job. So that's what you have to do. I mean, that's today's market is who you know. Market improve. Usually that comes with money. It's the only way the market as a whole improves. Software development is one of those things where if they don't have money, it's the last thing to pay. So if things are working, there's the levels of businesses. One is like keeping the lights on. That's your IT professionals that are just doing operations things. They're not building anything brand new, but they're making sure that the stuff still works. Those jobs will always be around. So that's the other thing. If you want to get in technology, what I tell the people that I meet with on Saturday, right now, my company has 4 support jobs open, solution support. So when somebody calls in and has a problem with their software, that's the front line there. And I know my company, they're big enough that once you get in that position and you're there for a solid year doing what you need to do, then there's a really good chance of you moving somewhere else. So if at that point they have an entry-level software engineering job, that you could easily, they're going to hire internal before they hire external. So they would have you come over and be a software engineer because they know that you're going to work hard. So the other suggestion is get into a tech adjacent field. Those of you that actually do have either management experience or teaching, like whenever I was a teacher for a real long time, project management is pretty good. Just looking at any of those, help desk, depending on what your pay that you're okay with. Getting into tech in general is hard right now. If you get into tech and then after you're in a job for a year, oftentimes you can make the move easier. All right, so somebody asked for projects that you can work on. What I do, I don't know if I'm still logged in. So this Gale presents Udemy. This is Udemy, but what I do is I go through, and of course I'm in the Kansas City area, and I have Mid-Continent Public Library. I can click on this, and I can actually get access to the paid Udemy stuff. So this is my favorite place to go because it does work a little bit nicer usually. And then I filter based on topic, obviously, but then I also filter based on I'm really good at either looking at the stars versus the number of reviews, also versus the date. Anything older than 3 years, I just wouldn't even look at. I usually stick within about a year old. If it's too new, sometimes you don't know how good it is, but those ones that are about a year old that have a lot of reviews, those are the ones I go after. So again, I went to Mid-Continent Library. Somebody in St. Louis said that there's a library over there that they went through and found something almost identical to this, if not the same. That is my preference to do. Now, if you look at the courses, their courses are 60 hours on average, 80 hours. And then that means that's just the videos, so that you have to double or triple that for you to actually work along with them. So do not expect to go in here and then just zoom through 3 courses or something. It's one of those things, pick the right one and then just stick with it. But some of them do full stack. Some of them do just React. Some of the ones that are just React are a little shorter. But this is where I go, Udemy, but then I don't want to have to pay for it. So I go through my library. St. Louis County Library, St. Charles, yeah. You guys help each other out where you guys know that. Yeah, and the link is just, I have to go through my library. So even if you go to this, it's still going through the library. So I would, yeah, somebody's saying Philadelphia Library gets free access to LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is fine. I don't like the setup. Like I don't, I learn from it, but it seems like I spend twice as long on videos than I do on Udemy. I think Udemy is a better platform. So then, I think this is a direct message rather than a group message, but UI UX, would that and development skills be helpful? If you're doing front-end development, yes. But again, right now the market is so weird. Like actually there's somebody on Saturday that showed up. They did a UX boot camp and they can't find anything. So user interface, and X is experience. It's shortness for experience. So user experience isn't just the look of it, but it's also the feel of it. It's the accessibility. It's so like my company has a UX team. They're not super big, and they work on. I can't even remember the platform they work on, but they don't work on code. They build it in, I think it's Figma. And so there's this program called Figma that you can like sketch up things. And then if you have the paid Figma version, you can hit like show the XML or HTML code, and it'll actually print off a template at least. Nobody uses it as just that, but that gives a front-end developer a good template to go by whenever they're doing those things. They're also the ones that update accessibility. You know, they don't work on one project. They like help people on several projects. That's why you usually don't have a UX designer or team unless the company's big enough. It's just part of the front-end developer's job if you're in a smaller company. Oh, Figma's free now? All right, nice. Yeah, I might, if somebody wants to, if somebody here has done Figma before, and really likes it and knows how to use it, I might have you guys help me out when right before we get into Unit 3, because I think that would help people when you're designing your projects to do that. So yeah, Emily or Bird, definitely reach out. I will mention it again at the end of Unit 2, and definitely let me pick your brain on that. Yeah. Okay. There's nice, a lot of you. Nice. Again, I'm not a front-end developer by trade, so like I've heard of it, not really into it that much. All right. Still on the recording, I want to show you how to do the IntelliJ stuff. I wanted to save it to last so that it would be the last thing on the recording. So if you guys want to go back to the recording sometime over the next week when you're doing IntelliJ and Java, you won't have to try to search through the video. Any other questions before I go into that? Because I do want to save it to last, so it is at the end. Oh, the other question that somebody asked, front end versus back end, do you need to pick? As an entry-level person, I think that you get whatever job they give you. Typically, there are some advantages and disadvantages to both, and it's based on your personality. The reason I like backend, I like structure, I like concrete, I like data. I don't want to do data analysis, but I like the structure of data and databases. I like API calls. So it helps me fit in that realm, where front-end development, even though you don't have to make it look absolutely perfect, you're spending time in CSS and HTML when you are a front-end developer. And I might touch a little bit of HTML, but not much. And I teach zero CSS. I don't think they would want to pay me enough to touch CSS. So, but that's personal preference. So if you like CSS and you like HTML, then you'll probably lean more towards a front-end developer, but you will have to know how to make API calls to the backend. And this will all make more sense during Unit 3. So do you have to pick a path? Absolutely not. To be honest, there's a little bit of both wherever you're at, because I do have to work with front-end development. It's just not the majority of my day. And there's vice versa there. So definitely, I would almost say not pick right now. I think the best point of attack is to be a generalist right now. You need to know a little bit about everything. Get really comfortable with a little bit about everything. And then once we get into Unit 3, start figuring out if there is one thing that you want to kind of focus and specialize in. It is a unique analogy. Like at a restaurant, if you work at a restaurant, there's your servers that take the food to the people, and then there's your cooks in the back. And then often, I mean, it takes all of them to run a successful restaurant, but they're just different jobs. And some people like one versus the other. Right. I am gonna go a little fast. That's because I'm not expecting you to do this with me right now. I do expect that if you want to see this again, you'll have the video, and I will show this again the next time. Well, it'll be too late by that point, but I will go over it again on Monday in a couple weeks. But I want to show you real quick. Whenever you go to, I think, I don't know if this is new or old or whatever else, but I do know that this is some form of Java web development from LaunchCode. So wait for the official link to come out. This might be it. I'm not gonna verify that. So Jamarco will send that out, and then it'll also be in Canvas. But this Java web development, I'm just gonna highlight this real quick. We're gonna use the IntelliJ IDE. And we're going to do a framework called Spring Boot, which I will 100% go over what those really mean later. All you need to know is whenever you're setting this stuff up, they are going to tell you to install some kind of JDK by going to this website and downloading it and doing all this kind of stuff. You can do that. Be my guest. That's how we used to do it in the olden days. But IntelliJ makes everything so seamless that if it was me, I would go straight over and just download IntelliJ. So it says here, install IntelliJ. Once you click on this site, you'll see this thing here. Obviously, IntelliJ has an ultimate version, and they want you to download that because they want you to get used to all the special features, but it technically only lasts for 30 days for free. You don't want to do that version. I do have this version for work, but work pays for it. So I do not have this on my personal account. On my personal account, I scroll down, so ultimate. There's a community edition. Now this one is for enthusiasts. That's what we are. We are enthusiasts. And we are getting excited about Java, so this is the one we need to do. I do the exe right there. If you hit the download, it'll do some other random stuff. I don't even know. I haven't downloaded it in so long. So that's what I would do, is hit the, so that's ultimate again. Yeah. If you hit the exe, Oh, there it goes. I didn't see it before, but it says that it's downloading it right here. So that's what you want. You want to download this thing, and the exe will automatically, like once you double click on it, will try to install it. Just install it with all the defaults. If it asked you for a Java version, that's when you go back to the textbook and you're like, man, they did tell me to install some Java something or other. What did they tell me to install? Well, it was Java 17. For those of you that really are enthusiasts, Java 22 just came out this past week. So, whatever that means. But Java 17 is the foundational one right now that a lot of companies are either moving to or on. So 17 is perfect. Of course, I already have IntelliJ installed, so I'm not going to go through that, but install it. But I will show you how to install the Java through IntelliJ. The other thing it wants you to do is just like normal. It has you, where's my clicks? Right. It wants you to download LaunchCode stuff, right? They always want you to have LaunchCode stuff. So you're going to go over whatever this tells you to do. I probably would not do it. What you want to do is you want where's the link? I want this in the video so you can see that I'm not just magically coming up with a GitHub account. Oh, it wants you to create a Java project. You can do that. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go to IntelliJ. This will open up an old one, like a project that I already have, but I'll show you real quick. If you go to new project, I don't know. I don't have my magnifier set up on my shortcuts. So hopefully you can zoom in at some point. On your new project, in the middle here, I know it's super small to read, I'm sorry. It'll ask for a JDK. If you have not downloaded Java yet, this would be blank. And so all you do is say, well, I don't have a Java one. So download JDK. It'll pop up another box that says, hey, what version do you want? And like I said, 22 just came out. You're going to want to go down to 17. Oh, that was 18. You're going to go down to 17. I do not care which of these you pick. I would probably just pick the top one just because it's the top one. It's Amazon. Amazon's will stay free. You're fine there. And then you just hit download. This is how I would download your JDK. New project. On the new project page, it'll say JDK. You say download JDK, and then you just download it from there. What that does is it syncs your JDK with IntelliJ. If you do it the manual way, you have to go find it and then sync them. This syncs them automatically. Make your new project, do whatever it says, but that's what I would do. Download IntelliJ first, new project, and install right here by doing your download right there. Once you do that, you will want your projects, right? So that's where you keep clicking through here, and it'll tell you go to this thing and fork it. But then it'll tell you fork it, but do not clone and create a local version. I don't know why they do that. You guys know how to do this. Go to clone. Oh, I don't want to clone that one. That one's launch codes. Oh, I want to fork it. I already made a fork. So I'm going to go to mine. Make sure your name is up here. You need that up there. Your username. If your username is not there, you're not on the right one. Also on your clone, make sure your username's in there. That's another way to know that it's yours. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say, hey, I have a launch code folder that I also call homework. I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to open this in terminal. All that does is it makes sure that my terminal is exactly where I want it. So now my terminal is exactly in LaunchCode homework. I do git clone, put that in there. It's going to download all that stuff. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to see my Java web development projects right there. When you set up IntelliJ, I would suggest that you make it so that it has this open folder as IntelliJ project. that's an option whenever you download IntelliJ. Is do you want to give your operating system that ability to do that? I always select yes. So I can open with VS Code. I can open up with IntelliJ project. At worst, you just open up IntelliJ and open up this folder. You guys know how to do that. But once I open this up, I have one other tidbit of tool information for you. It will say something to the effect of, if, oh yeah, this is a, no, I am sorry again, I don't have all my shortcuts set up. This is a little bit better. It's still probably a little hard to see, but you don't need to be able to see every single word. Anyway, here's all your things. You're going to be using data type examples, and it'll say, hey, go inside this thing, open up hello methods, and it'll tell you that there's supposed to be a green arrow right there, and there's not. Okay? There's two things I need to do. The first thing is I need to set up my SDK, which is my project JDK. So SDK is software development kit. JDK is Java development kit. Those are the same things. It's just the J is more specific because it's talking about Java. It's the only difference. So then I'm going to select my 17 version, whatever you did. The green thing is still not there. Here's the thing it doesn't tell you. Down off to the right, do not unclick things. Right here it says Gradle build scripts found. Here is all the different projects that LaunchCode has put in this one big project. Right now, do you see how there's a blue square on this top one? It is only recognizing one project right now, but I need it to recognize all of these as independent projects or modules. It doesn't matter about the vocabulary, but you just need to hit load here. Now, my computer might freeze and shut down off this video because it's going to take a lot of power and a lot of time to do this. But that's what you want to do. You just let it run. It says that there's 18 things. It is building all of those projects for you. And then once those get built the first time, you don't have to do it again. And I don't know if you already saw over here, now there's blue off to the side over here. My mouse is already lagging, so hopefully my voice is not lagging, but it might be. Yeah, your guys' videos are lagging. Okay. Anything else? I think that should be good, and then everything else should work. The green run button will be there once that happens. At worst, you just keep hitting this setup SDK until it does. I'm glad you guys can still hear me, though. 2 frames per second. Okay, I'm going to shut off the recording so you guys know where this is at.